My name is Sapphira, and I'm 32 years old. I never thought my own mother would break my heart with a single phone call. As I stood in my kitchen watching my 4-year-old daughter Emma color at the table, my mother's words echoed in my ears. Being a single mom is a family disgrace. You're not even invited to Thanksgiving. Her rejection cut deeper than any knife, but what I decided to do next left everyone in my family completely speechless. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up against family judgment, and stay tuned to see how I turned heartbreak into something beautiful that changed everything. I grew up in a small Midwestern town called Mapleton, where everyone knew everyone else's business and appearances mattered more than almost anything. My parents, Martha and George Williams, were pillars of the local community. My father owned the town's most successful insurance agency, and my mother was the president of practically every committee at First Presbyterian Church. Our family was expected to be perfect, or at least look perfect to everyone else. My older brother Michael was the golden child who could do no wrong. He followed the exact path my parents laid out for him pre-med at Northwestern Medical School at University of Michigan, perfect marriage to Karen, the daughter of my father's golf buddy, and two perfectly behaved children, Tyler and Madison. Every Christmas card and social media post showed their picture-perfect life, and my parents never missed an opportunity to mention my son, the cardiologist. My younger sister Abigail was cut from the same cloth as my parents. She studied accounting, joined the right sorority, and got engaged to William, whose family owned half the commercial real estate in our county. She called my mother daily, dressed in the clothes my mother approved of, and never ever rocked the boat. And then there was me. From an early age, I was different. While my siblings played it safe, I questioned everything. When my mother enrolled me in ballet, I wanted to play soccer instead. When they expected me to join the Young Republicans Club in high school, I started an environmental awareness group instead. I wasn't rebelling to be difficult. I simply had my own mind and my own dreams. Art was my passion. I could spend hours with a sketch pad, losing myself in creating something from nothing. When it came time for college, I fought hard to pursue graphic design instead of the business degree my father insisted was the only practical choice. "Artists starve, Sapphira," he'd say. "No daughter of mine is going to waste her education on doodling." But I stood my ground, and with a partial scholarship to the Art Institute of Chicago, I finally escaped the suffocating expectations of Mapleton. College was liberating. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued creativity and self-expression. I thrived in my classes and secured an internship at a boutique design agency that later offered me a full-time position. My parents viewed my move to Chicago as another act of defiance. They predicted I'd come crawling back to Mapleton within 6 months when real life proved too difficult. When that didn't happen, they switched to passive-aggressive comments during holiday visits. "It's so brave of you to live in that dangerous city. At least your tiny apartment is unique. Maybe you'll meet a nice lawyer who can take care of you properly." I learned to let their comments roll off my back. I was building a life I loved with friends who accepted me for who I was. And then I met Daniel. Daniel Rivera was nothing like the clean-cut Midwestern boys my parents hoped I'd date. He was a musician with soulful brown eyes and a laugh that made my heart skip. He was talented, passionate, and completely uninterested in conforming to anyone's expectations. We fell hard and fast for each other, spending every free moment together in a whirlwind of art shows, underground concerts, and long conversations about life and dreams. When I brought Daniel home for Christmas, my parents barely concealed their disapproval. My mother's smile was tight as she shook his hand, and my father made pointed comments about stable careers and family values. Daniel took it in stride, but the tension was palpable throughout the entire visit. "They'll come around," I assured him on the drive back to Chicago. "They just need time." But they didn't come around. Instead, the distance between us grew. Our phone calls became shorter and less frequent. I visited Mapleton less often, tired of defending my choices and my relationship. When I discovered I was pregnant, Daniel and I had been together for just over a year. The news came as a shock to both of us. We hadn't planned on starting a family so soon, but after the initial surprise, I felt a growing excitement. I imagined a little person with Daniel's eyes and my stubborn streak. I pictured us as a family unconventional but full of love. Daniel's reaction was very different. He became distant, staying out later, avoiding conversations about the future. 2 weeks after I shared the news, he sat me down in our apartment. "I can't do this, Sapphira," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'm not ready to be a father. I never planned on kids, you know that. But this is happening," I said, my hand instinctively moving to my still flat stomach. "We're having a baby." "You're having a baby," he corrected. "I'm sorry, but I can't be part of this." He moved out the next day, leaving me alone with a broken heart and a growing life inside me. I was devastated but determined. This baby hadn't asked to be brought into a complicated situation, but now that they were on the way, I would give them all the love in the world. Telling my parents was even harder than I'd anticipated. I waited until I was 14 weeks along, hoping they might see past their disappointment if I showed them I was committed to my decision. "I'm pregnant," I said, simply, sitting across from them at their dining room table during a weekend visit. My mother's teacup clattered against its saucer. "Where is Daniel?" she asked, her voice brittle. "He's not in the picture anymore. We broke up." The silence that followed was deafening. My father stared at his hands while my mother's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally settled on a cold disappointment that was worse than any shouting. "There are ways to handle this situation quietly," she finally said. "No one needs to know." It took me a moment to understand what she was suggesting. "I'm keeping my baby," I said firmly. "I'm not handling anything." "Think about what you're doing, Sapphira," my father spoke up. "Think about your future, your career. Think about this family's reputation." "I am thinking about my future," I replied. "My future with my child." I left Mapleton that day with my mother's words ringing in my ears. "Don't expect us to clean up this mess for you." The months that followed were challenging but transformative. I found a support group for single mothers, secured a family-friendly apartment, and worked out an arrangement with my employer to work partially from home after the baby arrived. My friend Jess threw me a baby shower, and my neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, a grandmother of 5, became my unofficial pregnancy mentor. When Emma was born, red-faced and screaming with healthy lungs, I felt a love I'd never experienced before. Looking into her tiny face, I knew I would move mountains for her. My parents sent a generic baby gift basket with no note, and neither they nor my siblings came to visit. The absence hurt, but Emma filled my life with so much joy that the pain was dulled. Over the next 4 years, my relationship with my family settled into a strained routine. We exchanged obligatory birthday and Christmas gifts. They sent Emma cards addressed to our granddaughter rather than by name. I called on major holidays, conversations that never lasted more than 15 minutes. I sent photos and updates that received minimal response. Michael and his family visited once when they were in Chicago for a medical conference, a stilted 2-hour lunch, where Karen watched Emma as if she might spontaneously demonstrate the dangers of being raised by a single mother. Despite the family tension, Emma and I built a beautiful life together. My career as a graphic designer flourished as I established myself as a freelancer with several steady clients. Emma grew into a bright, curious little girl with an infectious laugh and boundless energy. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our favorite parks and ice cream shops. We were a small but mighty family of 2. Until that phone call changed everything. It was a crisp October morning, the kind where the air smells like fallen leaves and possibility. Emma was sitting at our kitchen table, tongue poking out in concentration as she colored a picture of a unicorn. I was packing her lunch for preschool, a peanut butter sandwich cut into stars, apple slices, and the little yogurt cups she loved. When my phone rang showing my mother's number, I was surprised. Our calls usually happened on Sundays, and this was a Tuesday. "Hello," I answered, wedging the phone between my ear and shoulder as I zipped Emma's lunch bag. "Sapphira, I'm calling about Thanksgiving," my mother said without preamble. My heart did a little hopeful jump. In the 4 years since Emma was born, we'd never been invited to a family Thanksgiving. I always took Emma to Jess's parents' house or hosted a small dinner with friends. Was this finally an olive branch? Oh, I tried to keep my voice neutral. Yes, we're hosting this year at the house. Your father's siblings will be there, and Michael and Karen with the children, of course. Abigail and William, too. His parents are coming to discuss wedding arrangements. I waited for the invitation, a smile already forming. The thing is, my mother continued, her voice taking on the clipped tone she used when discussing unpleasant topics, I think it would be best if you didn't join us this year. The smile froze on my face. Excuse me. It's just not the right time with William's parents meeting the whole family, and your Aunt Judith can be so traditional. Being a single mother is, well, it's a family disgrace, quite frankly. You're not even invited to Thanksgiving. I felt like I'd been slapped. Mom, are you serious right now? You're excluding me and Emma because I'm a single parent. Don't be dramatic, Sapphira. I'm thinking of what's best for everyone. Karen doesn't want her children exposed to alternative lifestyles. And what would we tell William's parents? You know how important this marriage, is for your father's business relationships. Alternative lifestyles, I echoed, incredulous. I'm a single mom not running a drug cartel. There's no need for that tone, my mother sniffed. If you'd like, you can come by the day after Thanksgiving. Alone. We can have some leftover turkey sandwiches. Alone without Emma. It would be easier that way. Your father and I haven't quite figured out how to explain her situation to everyone. Her situation. Like my daughter was a problem to be managed, rather than a little girl who deserved to know her grandparents. I see, I said, my voice hollow. Thanks for the clarity, Mom. Don't be like that, Sapphira. You made your choices. We're just trying to make the best of things. I ended the call without another word, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back furiously. Emma was still coloring at the table, humming softly to herself, blissfully unaware that her grandmother had just declared her an embarrassment. I turned away, pretending to busy myself with the coffee maker as the first tears escaped. How could my own mother be so cruel, so shallow? I'd known our relationship was strained, but I never imagined she would explicitly exclude her granddaughter from a family holiday. Mommy, Emma's small voice came from behind me. Are you crying? I quickly wiped my eyes and turned around with a forced smile. Just a little, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups get sad too. She climbed down from her chair and wrapped her arms around my legs. When I'm sad, you give me a hug and a cookie. Does that work for grown-ups too? A laugh bubbled up through my tears, and I knelt down to pull her into a proper hug. That's exactly what works for grown-ups too. As I held my daughter, I made a silent promise. Emma would never have to beg for a place at anyone's table, not even family. She would never be made to feel like a disgrace or an inconvenience, and neither would I. That's when the seed of an idea began to form. If we weren't welcome at my family's Thanksgiving, then perhaps it was time to create our own tradition, one built on acceptance and genuine love, rather than appearances and obligation. Emma, I said, pulling back to look into her curious eyes. How do you feel about hosting our own special Thanksgiving party this year? Her face lit up. Can I help make the turkey? You can help with everything, I promised. As we finished getting ready for her preschool, my mind was already racing with plans. This rejection wasn't going to break us. Instead, it would become the catalyst for something new and beautiful, something that would leave everyone speechless. After dropping Emma at preschool, I drove to work on autopilot, my mother's words replaying in my mind like a cruel record. A family disgrace. The phrase cut deeper each time I thought of it. I'd spent years trying to convince myself that my parents' disapproval didn't matter, but hearing those words spoken so plainly had ripped off the protective callus I'd grown over that particular wound. I called my best friend Jess during my lunch break, barely making it through explaining what happened before breaking down in tears again. Your mother said what? Jess's outrage was immediate and validating. Sapphira, that's beyond horrible. That's straight-up emotional abuse. I know it's bad, I admitted. But part of me still wants to believe they'll come around someday. That they'll see how amazing Emma is and regret all the years they've wasted. Listen to me, Jess said firmly. Your parents have had 4 years to come around. 4 years of birthdays, Christmases, first words, first steps. They've chosen their ridiculous social standing over a relationship with their granddaughter every single time. I knew she was right, but it still hurt. Look, you and Emma can come to my parents' place for Thanksgiving like always. They adore her, you know that. Thanks, Jess, I said. But I think I need to do something different this year. As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew they were true. I was tired of waiting for my family's approval, tired of hoping for scraps of affection. Maybe it was time to stop trying to fit into a family that didn't want me and start creating something new. That evening after Emma was in bed, I called Dr. Peterson, the therapist I'd started seeing after Daniel left. She'd helped me navigate single motherhood and my complicated family dynamics over the years. It sounds like a clear boundary has been drawn by your mother, Dr. Peterson said after I recounted the conversation. The question is, what boundary do you want to set in response? I don't want Emma to ever feel the way I felt today, I said. Like she's somehow less worthy because of circumstances beyond her control. That's a good place to start, Dr. Peterson encouraged. What would honoring that boundary look like for you? I thought about it. I think it means creating our own traditions, surrounding ourselves with people who genuinely care about us, not because they're obligated by blood, but because they choose to be in our lives. That sounds healthy and empowering, she affirmed. Sometimes the families we create are more nurturing than the ones we're born into. By the time our session ended, I had the outline of a plan. I was going to host my own Thanksgiving, a gratitude gathering for the people who had supported Emma and me through thick and thin. Instead of begging for inclusion at my parents' table, I would create a celebration where everyone was welcome exactly as they were. The next morning, I started a list of potential guests, Jess, of course, Mrs. Rodriguez, my elderly neighbor who babysit Emma in emergencies, my coworker Tariq and his partner who had moved from Pakistan and had no family nearby, my client Sarah, who had recently divorced and was dreading the holidays, the young couple who had just moved into our building and mentioned they couldn't afford to fly home this year. As the list grew, so did my excitement. This wouldn't just be a meal. It would be a declaration of independence from the toxic family dynamics that had shadowed me for too long. It would be the beginning of new traditions for Emma and me. I created simple but beautiful invitations on my computer, using my graphic design skills to make them special. Join us for a gratitude gathering, as they read. All are welcome at our table. I included a note explaining that this would be a potluck-style event with me providing the turkey and everyone bringing a dish that meant something to them, perhaps a family recipe or a cultural favorite. Emma was thrilled with the idea, especially when I told her she could help with decorations and planning. That weekend, we went shopping for craft supplies and Thanksgiving decor. As she carefully selected paper in fall colors and stickers shaped like leaves, her enthusiasm was contagious. "Can we make hand turkeys?" she asked, referring to the classic childhood craft of tracing your hand to create a turkey shape. "Absolutely," I agreed. "In fact, let's make one for each person coming to our party so everyone has a special place card." We were examining a display of artificial pumpkins when my phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen, surprising me. My brother rarely called. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Sapphira?" Michael's voice was tense. "Mom told me about the Thanksgiving situation." "Oh," I kept my tone neutral, wondering whose side he was on. "Look, I think she's being ridiculous," he said, surprising me. "I told her it wasn't right to exclude you and Emma." Relief and gratitude washed over me. "Thank you for saying that, Michael." He sighed heavily. "Don't thank me too much. I didn't push hard enough. Karen thinks, well, she's worried about the kids asking questions about Emma's dad." And just like that, my momentary hope deflated. "Heaven forbid your children learn that families come in different shapes, Michael." I know, he said, sounding genuinely conflicted. "I'm trying to work on Karen. Maybe I can convince Mom to reconsider." Don't bother, I said. Emma and I are hosting our own Thanksgiving this year with people who actually want us around. Saf, come on. We're family. Are we? I asked, because it doesn't feel that way when my daughter is treated like a shameful secret. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, he finally said. I should have done more over the years. Yes, you should have. I agreed, watching Emma compare two different pumpkins with adorable concentration. But it's not too late to start. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The conversation confirmed what I already knew, that my place in my birth family was conditional dependent on how well I conformed to their expectations. But it also reinforced my determination to build something better for Emma and me. Over the next few weeks, our plans took shape. Every person I invited accepted with enthusiasm, many expressing how grateful they were to have somewhere to go for the holiday. Mrs. Rodriguez offered to bring her famous sweet potato casserole. Tariq and Jason volunteered homemade bread and a Pakistani dish Tariq's mother always made for special occasions. Jess promised her legendary pecan pie. The new neighbors, Amy and David, were excited to contribute a vegetable dish and wine. Our small apartment would be crowded with 12 people, but I didn't care. It would be warm and welcoming, a true celebration of gratitude and acceptance. As Thanksgiving approached, I felt a growing sense of peace about my decision. I was still hurt by my mother's rejection, but I was no longer devastated by it. I was too busy creating something new to dwell on what I'd been denied. The day before Thanksgiving, Emma and I spent the afternoon making pies, a slightly messy but joyful process that left us both with flour on our faces and laughter in our hearts. The turkey was thawing in the refrigerator, the apartment was clean and decorated with our handmade crafts, and a sense of anticipation filled our home. That's when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Our guests weren't due until the next day, and I hadn't ordered any deliveries. Emma was napping after our baking session, tired out from all the excitement. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to answer the door, assuming it was perhaps a neighbor or a package. Instead, I found my parents standing in the hallway. My mother was impeccably dressed as always. Not a hair out of place, her camel coat probably costing more than my monthly rent. My father stood slightly behind her, looking uncomfortable in the way he always did when emotional confrontations loomed. "Mom, Dad," I said, too surprised to say anything else. "May we come in?" My mother asked, her tone making it clear she expected an affirmative answer. I hesitated, then stepped aside. I wasn't going to have a conversation in the hallway where neighbors might overhear. As they entered, I saw my mother taking in the apartment with critical eyes. The modest furniture, the crayon drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, the Thanksgiving decorations Emma and I had made. "What are you doing here?" I asked as we moved to the living room. My mother sat primly on the edge of my sofa while my father remained standing, hands in his pockets. "Michael called us," she explained. "He seems to think we've been unfair to you regarding Thanksgiving." I crossed my arms. "Unfair is putting it mildly." "There's no need for that attitude," my mother said. "We've come to discuss a compromise." "A compromise?" I repeated flatly. "Yes, we understand you're upset about our Thanksgiving arrangements, so we thought perhaps you could come for dessert in the evening, after William's parents have left. Emma could stay with a sitter, of course." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had driven all the way to Chicago to offer me crumbs, leftover pie after the real guests had gone. "That's not a compromise," I said. "That's still treating me and my daughter like we're something to be ashamed of." My mother sighed dramatically. "Sapphira, you've always insisted on making things difficult. We're trying to include you while respecting everyone's comfort level." "Everyone's comfort except mine and Emma's," I pointed out. "Why is Karen's discomfort more important than my daughter feeling welcome in her own family?" "Karen has provided Michael with a stable traditional family," my mother said. "She has certain values about how children should be raised. And I don't, because I'm raising my daughter alone, I don't have values." "That's not what your mother meant." My father finally spoke up, his voice conciliatory. Then what did she mean? Please explain to me why my 4-year-old daughter is being punished for something that isn't her fault. My mother's lips thinned. No one is punishing her. But actions have consequences, Sapphira. You chose to have a child outside of marriage with a man who clearly wasn't father material. You chose to keep the baby despite our advice. These were your decisions. Yes, they were, I agreed. And I stand by them. Emma is the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will never ever let anyone make her feel like she's less than perfect exactly as she is. I gestured around the apartment at the paper hand turkeys drying on the counter. The construction paper leaves we'd hung from the ceiling, the centerpiece Emma had carefully arranged. We're having our own Thanksgiving here, with people who accept us without conditions. My mother looked genuinely shocked. You can't be serious. What kind of Thanksgiving could you possibly have in this tiny apartment? One filled with love and genuine gratitude, I said simply. One where no one is measuring whether they're worthy enough to sit at the table. This is ridiculous, my mother huffed. You're being childish and selfish. Have you even thought about how your behavior affects Emma? What kind of example are you setting cutting her off from her family? I'm not cutting her off from anyone, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You are. You and Dad and Michael and everyone else who has treated her like an inconvenient mistake for the past 4 years. We've sent gifts cards, my father started. Material things, I interrupted. Not time, not love, not acceptance. Do you know she asked me last Christmas why Grandma and Grandpa never want to play with her like Jess's parents do? Do you know how hard it was to answer that question without breaking her heart? A small voice came from the hallway. Mommy. We all turned to see Emma standing there in her mismatched pajamas, her hair mussed from her nap, clutching her stuffed elephant. My heart sank at the realization that she'd heard at least part of our argument. Hi, sweetie, I said, forcing a smile. Look who came to visit. Grandma and Grandpa. Emma regarded them with cautious curiosity. They had only met her a handful of times and never for more than a few hours. To her, they were practically strangers. Hello, Emma, my mother said with a stiff smile. My, haven't you grown? Emma moved to stand beside me, leaning against my leg. I put my hand protectively on her shoulder. Are you coming to our turkey party? She asked them innocently. My parents exchanged glances. Actually, we were hoping you and your mother would come to our house for Thanksgiving, my father said, casting a warning look at my mother before she could correct him. But we already made our hand turkeys, Emma said with the straightforward logic of a 4-year-old. And Mommy bought a real turkey that's bigger than my head. Despite the tension, I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. That's right, sweetie. We're having our special party here, remember? My mother stood up, smoothing her skirt with sharp movements. This was clearly a mistake. We tried to be reasonable, Sapphira, but you're determined to be difficult. If you change your mind about dessert tomorrow, call us. As she moved toward the door, she paused by Emma, reaching out awkwardly as if to pat her head, before thinking better of it. Goodbye, Emma. Be a good girl for your mother. The condescension in her tone was the final straw. Emma, I said clearly, is always good. She's kind, creative, thoughtful, and the best daughter anyone could ask for. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be in her life. My mother's face tightened, and my father looked pained, but neither responded. A moment later they were gone, the door closing behind them with a decisive click. Emma looked up at me with wide eyes. Are you mad, Mommy? I knelt down to her level. Not at you. Never at you. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about things, and that's okay. Grandma didn't like our turkeys, she asked, pointing to our craft project. Grandma just has a different idea about Thanksgiving. I explained, choosing my words carefully. But our turkey party is going to be amazing with all our friends and so many yummy foods. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. As she went to inspect our cooling pies, chattering about which one she thought would taste best, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness that my parents couldn't see past their rigid expectations. Anger at their continued rejection. But also surprisingly relief. I had finally stood my ground without wavering, without accepting the crumbs they offered, and pretending they were enough. That night after Emma was asleep, I received a text from Abigail, my sister. "I heard what happened with Mom and Dad today. I'm sorry. I don't agree with them. Call me." It was the most supportive thing my sister had ever said to me regarding my situation. Maybe, just maybe, the ripples from my standing up for myself were spreading in unexpected ways. Thanksgiving morning dawned bright and clear. Emma woke me up early, bouncing on my bed with excitement. "Turkey Day! Turkey Day!" she chanted, her hair a wild tangle around her beaming face. Her enthusiasm was contagious. We made pancakes shaped like turkeys for breakfast, then started our preparations for the gathering. Emma was my dedicated helper, taking her responsibilities very seriously. She arranged the hand turkeys at each place setting, careful to put the ones she'd made for Jess and Mrs. Rodriguez at the spots she'd designated for her favorite people. "We need music, Mommy," she declared, so I put on a playlist of upbeat songs and we danced around the kitchen as we worked. I showed her how to safely stir the cranberry sauce on the stove, letting her add the orange zest and cinnamon. She helped me tear bread for the stuffing, giggling at the way it crumbled in her small hands. By early afternoon, delicious smells filled our apartment. The turkey was roasting, sides were prepped, and the table was set with our mismatched but cheerful dishes. We'd moved furniture to create one long table using our regular dining table, a folding table borrowed from Mrs. Rodriguez, and my desk. It wasn't elegant, but it was welcoming. Jess arrived first, bringing not only her promised pecan pie, but also extra folding chairs and a bottle of sparkling cider for Emma. Mrs. Rodriguez came next with her sweet potato casserole and a handmade tablecloth she insisted was just gathering dust, but I suspected she'd purchased specially for the occasion. Soon our apartment was filling with guests, each arriving with food and smiles. Tariq and Jason brought their contributions, plus a beautiful bouquet of fall flowers. Sarah arrived with homemade rolls and tears in her eyes as she thanked me for including her. Amy and David from downstairs came with roasted vegetables and wide-eyed appreciation for the warm atmosphere. Two of my regular freelance clients who had become friends joined us, along with a coworker who'd recently moved to Chicago and had nowhere else to go for the holiday. Our small apartment hummed with conversation, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Emma flitted from guest to guest like a perfect little hostess, showing everyone to their seats and explaining which hand turkey she'd made especially for them. As we gathered around our makeshift table, I felt a wave of emotion. This was nothing like the formal, picture-perfect Thanksgivings of my childhood, where cloth napkins were folded just so, and dinner conversation was carefully regulated. This was messy and imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. "Before we eat," I said, raising my glass, "I'd like to start a new tradition. I'd love for each of us to share one thing we're grateful for this year." We went around the table, each person offering something heartfelt: health, friendship, new beginnings, creative opportunities. When it was Emma's turn, she stood on her chair with my hand ready to catch her if needed and declared, "I'm thankful for my mommy who makes the best pancakes and gives the best hugs and doesn't care if my socks match." Everyone laughed and I blinked back tears as I hugged her. When it was my turn, I looked around at the faces of these people who had chosen to spend their holiday with us, who accepted us exactly as we were. "I'm grateful for all of you," I said simply, "for showing me that family isn't just about blood, it's about love and acceptance and being there for each other through thick and thin." Just as we were about to serve the food, the doorbell rang. Excusing myself, I went to answer it, assuming it was the last of our guests who had mentioned they might be running late. Instead, I found Michael standing there with his wife Karen and their 2 children. Behind them, looking nervous but determined, was my sister Abigail. "Surprise?" Michael said weakly. "Room for a few more." I stared at them in shock. "What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be at Mom and Dad's?" "We were," Michael confirmed. "But after I heard what happened yesterday, and then this morning when Mom was giving the kids a lecture about appropriate family structures before William's parents arrived, I couldn't do it anymore." Karen looked uncomfortable, but stepped forward. "I owe you an apology, Sapphira. I've been judgmental and unfair. I told myself I was protecting my children, but really I was just being narrow-minded. When Michael suggested we come here instead, I realized it was the right thing to do. I was speechless. My brother, who had always towed the family line, had walked out of our parents' perfect Thanksgiving to come to my cobbled-together celebration. We had a huge fight with Mom and Dad, Abigail added, stepping forward. I told them I was sick of the pretense of acting like Emma doesn't exist just because she doesn't fit their idea of how a family should be created. I finally found my voice. What about William and his parents? Abigail smiled ruefully. William's at your parents still. His parents are nice people, but they're cut from the same cloth as Mom and Dad. I told him I needed to be with my sister today, and if he couldn't understand that we had bigger problems than Thanksgiving dinner. Aunt Sapphira, Tyler Michael's 8-year-old son, pushed forward. Do you really have a turkey bigger than someone's head? Dad said we'd have more fun here. I laughed, the tension breaking. We absolutely do. And your cousin Emma is going to be so excited to see you. And just like that, our gathering expanded. We squeezed in more chairs, found extra plates, and rearranged the food to make everything fit. Emma was ecstatic to have her cousins there, proudly showing them the decorations she'd made and immediately incorporating them into a game she'd invented. The adults had to adjust too. Karen was clearly out of her comfort zone in our eclectic gathering, but she made a visible effort to engage with everyone. Michael seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, laughing freely with Tariq and Jason. Abigail kept checking her phone nervously, no doubt getting texts from our parents, but she remained firmly at the table. Halfway through the meal, my phone rang. My parents. I excused myself to take the call in my bedroom. What have you done? My mother demanded without preamble. Michael and Karen just left with the children. Abigail stormed out. William is mortified. Thanksgiving is ruined. I didn't do anything, Mom, I replied calmly. They made their own choices, just like I did. This is unacceptable, she fumed. Your father's brother is asking questions. William's parents are confused. You've created a spectacle. No, you did that when you excluded your own daughter and granddaughter from a family holiday. I just created an alternative where everyone is welcome. There was a long pause. Then my father's voice came on the line. They must have put me on speaker. Sapphira, he said, sounding tired. This situation has gotten out of hand. Tell Michael and Abigail to come back. We can discuss things later. I'm not telling them anything, Dad. They're adults who made their own decisions. But if you and Mom want to join us, you're welcome to. There's plenty of food, and Emma would love to show you the hand turkey she made specially for you, just in case you changed your mind. Another long silence. You expect us to come to your gathering? My mother finally said the word, dripping with disdain. I don't expect anything, I answered truthfully. But the invitation is open. We're having a wonderful time here with people who care about each other. No pretense, no judgment. Just gratitude and acceptance. It's what Thanksgiving should be. This conversation is pointless, my mother declared. George, we're done here. But my father surprised me. What's the address again, Sapphira? Just in case. I gave it to him, trying not to get my hopes up. After hanging up, I rejoined the celebration, deciding not to mention the call to Michael or Abigail. This day was about joy, not drama. And joyful it was. We ate until we couldn't eat anymore, then moved to the living room for games and conversation. Emma taught her cousins how to make paper snowflakes for our next holiday decoration project. Mrs. Rodriguez showed Karen her secret technique for perfect pie crust. Michael and Tariq discovered they had both played college baseball and launched into animated stories of their glory days. About an hour after the phone call, there was another knock at the door. I opened it to find my father standing alone in the hallway, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Your mother couldn't... She's not ready, he said by way of greeting. But I thought maybe I should see what all the fuss is about. I smiled and stepped back. Come in, Dad. We're just about to have second round of dessert. He entered hesitantly, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. The diverse group of people laughing and talking, Emma playing with her cousins, the remnants of our feast still on the table. "Grandpa!" Emma spotted him and came running, stopping just short of hugging him, unsure if it would be welcome. "Did you come for pie? I helped make the apple one." My father looked down at her. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time. She had my eyes and Daniel's smile, her own unique personality shining through. "I would love to try your apple pie," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. As Emma led him by the hand to the dessert table, chattering about how she had put in the cinnamon all by herself, I saw something shift in my father's expression. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, but it was a beginning, a crack in the wall of disapproval that had surrounded me for so long. My mother didn't come that day, but my father stayed for nearly 2 hours awkwardly at first, then with growing ease as he was welcomed into our celebration without question or judgment. Before he left, he knelt down to Emma's level, no small feat for a man in his 60s with a bad knee, and thanked her for having him at her turkey party. "Will you come to the next one?" she asked innocently. He glanced up at me, then back to her. "I'd like that very much," he said, and I knew he meant it. 1 year later, I stood in a kitchen twice the size of my old apartment, putting the finishing touches on a Thanksgiving feast. So much had changed since that pivotal holiday. My gratitude gathering had become the talk of our extended circles, with people already asking months in advance if I would host again. The guest list had grown to the point where my apartment simply couldn't accommodate everyone, leading to one of the biggest changes of the year: a move to a small house with a yard for Emma and a dining room that could actually fit a proper table. The move had been possible thanks to a promotion at work and a successful side business I'd launched, designing custom holiday cards and family newsletters, ironically inspired by the invitations I'd created for last year's gathering. Emma was now in kindergarten, thriving in school and making friends easily. She had her father's natural charm combined with a confidence that I hoped came partly from seeing her mother stand up for what was right. Michael and Karen had undergone their own transformation. After Thanksgiving, they'd started family therapy to address the unhealthy patterns they'd fallen into. Karen had admitted that her judgment of my choices stemmed largely from her own insecurities as a mother. Now Emma had regular play dates with her cousins, and Karen and I were slowly building a genuine friendship. Abigail and William had postponed their wedding, taking time to make sure they were marrying for the right reasons rather than family expectations. Abigail had started calling me regularly for advice, a reversal that still made me laugh sometimes. She was learning to find her own voice, inspired partly by what she'd witnessed at our Thanksgiving table. My father had become a surprisingly consistent presence in our lives. He visited every few weeks, gradually learning how to be a grandfather to Emma. He brought her books and took genuine interest in her drawings. He never directly apologized for the years of distance, but his actions spoke louder than any words could have. My mother was a more complicated story. The family rebellion had shaken her deeply, threatening her carefully constructed image of perfection. For months she had doubled down, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things had started to shift. She sent Emma a handmade birthday card. She called occasionally, her conversations stilted but trying. Last month she had asked if she could bring a pie to Thanksgiving, her first direct acknowledgement of our new tradition. "Need any help?" Jess appeared in the kitchen doorway, breaking my reverie. "Could you check if the table is set properly?" I asked. Emma was in charge of place cards, but I'm not sure if she finished before she got distracted with her cousins. Jess nodded and headed to the dining room, where I could hear the sounds of children playing. Mrs. Rodriguez was already there, directing Tyler in the proper arrangement of napkins, while Madison and Emma giggled about something. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "On our way. Karen made an extra green bean casserole just in case. Mom and Dad about 10 minutes behind us." Yes, my parents were coming. Both of them. It had taken months of careful negotiation, a few false starts, and one teary conversation with my mother where she'd finally admitted she was more worried about what people thought than about what was right. She was still learning, still sometimes slipping into old patterns, but she was trying. And for Emma's sake, and my own. I was giving her the chance. As guests began to arrive, the house filled with the same wonderful energy as the previous year, but with new additions. William had come with Abigail this time, having decided that authentic relationships were more important than business connections. Daniel's mother, who had reached out after years of silence wanting to know her granddaughter, was nervously arranging a dish of traditional Puerto Rican rice she'd brought. My client Sarah had brought her new boyfriend, a kind-eyed teacher, who looked at her with genuine adoration. When my parents arrived, my mother carrying a perfectly baked apple pie, there was an initial awkwardness that soon gave way to the warm chaos of the gathering. Emma showed my mother the place card she'd made for her, decorated with extra glitter. Because grandmas like shiny things. The simple gesture brought tears to my mother's eyes. Before we ate, we continued our tradition of sharing gratitudes. When it was my turn, I looked around the expanded table, at my daughter healthy and happy, at my friends who had become family, at my family who were learning to be friends, at the beautiful community we had built together. I'm grateful for second chances, I said, for the courage to stand up for what's right even when it's hard, for the ability to forgive and move forward. Most of all, I'm grateful that a moment that could have broken us instead made us stronger. My mother caught my eye across the table, a look of understanding passing between us. We had a long way to go still, years of hurt to heal, but we were at the same table, literally and figuratively. That was a beginning worth being thankful for. As Emma had so wisely observed last year, when I explained why our gathering was special, so family isn't just people who look the same or live in the same house. Family is people who love you even when you spill juice on the carpet. Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom. We adults spend lifetimes learning that true family is defined not by blood or obligation, but by love and acceptance. By people who make room for you at the table no matter what. Have you ever had to create your own traditions when family disappointed you? How did you build your circle of support? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. If you know someone who might need to hear this message of creating your own family of choice, please share this video with them. Thank you for being part of my extended family today, and I wish you a Thanksgiving filled with genuine gratitude and unconditional love wherever and however you celebrate.